Hello, everyone. This is JD Calderon. This is Indie Comics Explained, and yet again today I brought on another fantastic guest. But before we get to him, do me a favor. Please hit like, hit subscribe, share out the video, let people know we're here. And currently on Indiegogo, I have the Oswald Chronicles, and these are the books that I'm offering up. This is a prose book, a chap book, a little bit smaller. And these are the two comics. My Time with Clive. Good jumping on point for Oswald. So if you want to go check it out, help support me, help support the channel, help support my work. But without further ado, this is not about me. This is about Senior here, Mr. Ray Felix. What's up, Ray? How you been?
That was a cool little transition. How are you?
I'm good, bro. I'm good. All right, man. So let's get right into it, man. I know you've been in the business for a minute, man. I remember the last time, what was it, 93?
In the 90s, yeah. Well, even doing my own comics, yeah, 90s, yeah, 93.
Yeah. All right. So you got in it maybe a year or two after I did because I'm old as fuck.
Yeah, I was actually selling comic books originally, going to shows and doing that as a kid.
Yeah, man. I mean, but that was the time to do it, though.
Yeah, it was. That was the time to really crack that nut. And if you didn't crack it, it didn't happen. It ain't got
exactly. So, all right. So let's start from early on. Like, you're a big indie dude. I'm a big indie dude. So, like, I know I had my genesis as to how I got into it. How did you get into indie?
Well, I got into comics period because I had two older cousins. My grandfather basically had two wives, and we had like different generations of cousins.
Right.
So I was like,
I've been there, done that.
Yeah, exactly. So I was a little kid, and I had these two cousins, Mitchell and Tito, and they used to always throw these comics in my face. Which one's better? Which cousin you like better? We'll give you this comic book. And I remember the very first comic book he put in my face was Sin Eater with Peter Parker's Spectacular Spider-Man. I remember reading that. I don't even remember how old I was. I must have been like 10 or 11 or I don't know what it was, but I remember getting blown away. Like, whoa, it's like. And then later on, he was going to college. He was going to Buff State. So he opened up. There was like this flea market on Allentown Avenue on White Plains Road. There was like a little storefront. And just rented out little out things, and people had their little things selling different things. And in the back, we had comic books from, I guess it was Mile High back then. I don't even think Diamond was back then in the 80s, right? Or maybe I don't know, but I think it was Mile High Comics. So Secret Wars was the book that everyone was buying and going crazy for, and I was a little kid selling books for the summertime with my cousin and my brother. And he kind of opened my eyes to the business of comics and selling comics, and also women's novels, because my mom had a bunch of Harlequin novels, and we took these giant boxes and we sold them for 75 cents, and we had all these women buying shit. So that's how I realized that women love romantic story novels, not just my mom, and then guys love comic books. So that was like, as a writer, that really like opened up my eyes to like genre. And and then at 15, I worked at a comic book store. There was I called them the Midtown Comics of the Bronx. It was Wow Comics. They had 3 or 4 stores in the Bronx, and they had one on Pelham Parkway, one on 233rd, which I worked at, one on Bruckner Boulevard, and then one somewhere, I think Bronx Park East or something like that. But that guy was huge. He was into construction, but in the 90s, everything collapsed. So,
Yeah, it sucks. Growing up, I had like 3 comic stores, like right down, like about a mile from me. I had Super Snipe, Action Comics, East Side Comics, and the Batcave.
Exactly. Look, we were poor, but we were illiterate, right?
Exactly. So I mean, so continue with that. What? So you got into the business, right? Like, what is it that got you, that made you say, I'm gonna go indie, as opposed to like, trying to show over to the other to the.
I think college. When I was in college, that was my first experience of getting ripped off, because they used to be, now it's all computers at SVA, but back in the day it was like the main building on I think it was like the 5th or 6th floor. They had like all these art tables there, and everyone would jam. And I wasn't a cartoonist major. I was like undeclared for a while, like in the 90s. And this is like 93. I was in SVA. And eventually, I got manipulated by the counselors. They needed more people in the fine art department, so they convinced me to go into fine art. But I never stopped drawing comic books.
Scope this pot.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we need more people in this department. Go over there. But I never stopped. I was always drawing in the cartooning section, and I was a nighttime student. I wasn't really a good student as a kid. I didn't like school, so I didn't like going to day school, so I went to night school.
Right.
That's where I went to like Denny O'Neill's classes, Carmen Infantino, Howard Post. I had met Will Eisner, and he wanted me to take his class, but I told him no. I feel like a jerk now, but I was like, yeah. So, and then I just realized that, I won't talk about what got stolen then, but as a student, there was a lot of interns that worked at Marvel and DC at the college, and they were just like ripping shit left and right. Like, you would see something in there, and I was just like, oh, I got to keep it quiet. But I realized after doing all these interviews after graduation in 2000 that I have to go Indy because there was this guy, Unc, in SVA. God knows where he is now, but he's the one that put me on the path. He was like, hey, the School of Visual Arts doesn't think comic books is art. And this is like early 90s. They were like, comics wasn't making their thing. And even though they had classes teaching it, I mean, teachers would tell you straight up, comic books is not an art form. It's not art. They would tell you to your face, So it was like like nobody wanted to do comics. You didn't even talk about doing comic books, Like, oh, I'm in cartooning. I'm in the cartooning department. I mean, I could do like King Features or whatever. It's like, that's okay. Right. Yeah. That has some class to it. But Marvel and DC is like, nobody respected that, And so, yeah. I mean, and then I think that guy, Anki, he introduced me to a bunch of comic book people. The School of Visual Arts, what's funny is like after I graduated, started like a cartooning comic thing. They published comics, but we were advocating for that for years. Like, he was a senior, I was a freshman. He was doing it for his 4 years. They wouldn't give him a dime. He was putting out his own books. Right. And then he put me onto some other kids in different grade levels. And then we started doing our own thing and started putting it out, So that was, that's how I really got into it. And then a buddy of mine in the Bronx, he was doing like a newsletter, fanzine type of thing. So I got into fanzines, working on fanzines with him. Right. And that's all before 1995, It's like,
Right,
yeah. That's even just getting into it as a writer. And I was more of a writer than an artist at that time, even though I went to art school. I knew how to draw. I mean, but I didn't consider myself like an artiste. I consider myself like a writer. And the only reason I drew was like a means to an end. Well, I need to draw this because nobody else is going to draw it. So
got to do what I did. I married my artist.
There you go. That's smart, man. Yeah.
Listen, like, look,
yeah.
You pay in other ways. Right? But it's all good, though. It's all good.
No, your wife is very talented, man. Her art is amazing, yeah.
That is my partner in crime in all things.
That is fantastic. That was perfect,
Yeah. I got lucky. I got very, very lucky.
Yeah. I mean, it's really good.
I didn't hit the lotto, but I got my wife.
That's more than the lotto, man. It's more
yes, it is.
If you hit the lotto when you were younger, you'd probably be broke now.
This is true. This is very true. I'd probably be dead. All right. So what was the first comic you did on your own?
The first book that I did was called Capo Java, and I called myself Capo Java Studio. But actually, Capo Java Studio came later. The very first company that I called myself under copyright was the Nimrod Press, named after Nimrod, like being stupid, the slang, but also Nimrod from the Bible, like this guy. And it was me. Shit, I don't remember these people, but it was like an Indian guy, a British girl, a girl from England. He was doing like these Betty Page poetry things. He had straight up comics, There was this little black kid who had like an ear that was like melted or deformed or something. He was an SBA and he was my inker. He was good. I lost track of all these people. And we did that. And that was called Cup of Java.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then later on after graduation, I changed the name from Nimrod Press to Cup of Java Studio. So we were doing like old school, going to copycats, making copies of the books, you know, and then handing them out. And then the Roadkill Review was bigger at the time because we had a fan base like being sold in like different bookstores all over. You know, New York City had tons of comic book stores, tons of bookstores, mom and pop shops, and you would just go in there and they'd carry it. They wouldn't even say no. You just go. I would be like nervous, and sweating, and then my very first official magazine style comic that I did all by myself. I took, since everyone fell off, they, you know, between drugs or life, you know, like people just kind of fell off and disappeared, like, you know, in college. And then I had a kid, so I couldn't hang out anymore. So I just became responsible, you know, had a job, you know, had to sustain my life. So I got made fun of for that because I was like this father, responsible guy. But people in college looked at me. They already looked at me like one of the teachers or something, not even like like one of their peers. Because I kind of had my shit together at a very young age. I don't know why, but I mean, you know, even though I slipped and had a kid at a young age, you know, but I was like, but I still.
You had to suck it up.
I sucked it up, got a job, started working for the Board of Education, and I put out this book called God the Second Coming, which I have on my wall over there. It's like, and so I took the stuff from the Nimrod Press Cup of Java, and then I just called it God the Second Coming. And it was that in A World Without Superheroes I created at the same time. And I was like, which one should I do? World Without Superheroes, God the Second Coming. And I was like, people want to laugh, you know, people don't care about, you know. I was ahead of my time with a lot of this stuff because now, like, I had mentioned to you the other day that now there's a book called The Second Coming.
Right.
Yeah. You know, and I was doing like these like superheroes that weren't superheroes, and like now you have the TV show The Boys, but there's this stuff that comic book professionals were looking at, like Denny O'Neil's like, this is not comics, or like Carmen Infantino's like, this is not comic books. Superheroes aren't like this. Superheroes don't kill people. Superheroes aren't evil, you know. Right. And of course you had the Watchmen out there, but the Watchmen really didn't have that either. They had like a grittiness to it, but they didn't straight up kill and gore and all that stuff. Now that's commonplace, you know. The British comics were doing that, you know, like 2000 AD. But Americans were very shy and like little virgins, afraid to like cross that. That was like a no-no. Like, oh, you can't go on that. You know, even like black comics like Milestone, that was like a no-no. Like, oh, you're reading a black comic book? Oh, that was like, people were like, I don't know why people were shocked about America being divided now. Because to me, it's always, you know, we're Latino. We've always seen division, you know. And I remember people in comic book stores would like segregate their comics, like the Milestones on this side, and the Marvel and DC is on this side, and they had their own rack. Oh, and if you went onto that rack, people would like talk shit about you, you know. It's just like,
if you really wanted to get talked shit about, you'd walk all the way in the back in the corner of the porn section.
Right, exactly. That's where my books were. I was like, that's
exactly.
I did stuff like that. I used to joke around and do stuff like that. Like, I remember I used to always tease Carmen Infantino and Denny O'Neil. He used to hate that. I remember Carmine mostly because I got more of a reaction out of him. So whenever we had like homework assignment, I always give him like some X-rated art. You know, I was like a young funny guy. You know, so he would be like, "Oh my God, this is not you're a fine artist. You don't belong here. This is not you. This is not comic. This is not going to work." You know. Yeah. And I was like, "That's the future of comics, man. I'm telling you." He was like, "No, this is not comic books." But then he would like look at it, like he looks forward to seeing what I drew. You know.
Right. It's like. So let me see those next 10 pages. Let me see those.
Right.
Where are they? Next week.
I don't know. Wherever I went, I always like shined. Like in the classroom, they were like, "Oh, what's this guy doing? What's this guy doing?" You know. And I think it's because most people that went to SBA, a lot of artists weren't writers, but they were learning how to write. And And I was the opposite. I was a writer trying to learn how to be an artist.
Yeah, I gave up on the art like real early on. I was drawing up until junior high school, right? And then I met a guy there who became a very good friend of mine. And he was an artist and he was drawing. And I saw how well he drew, and I was like, fuck that. I'm going to keep writing.
Well, about mainstream guys, I see even the young guys, everyone looks like Jim Lee now. It's like, what's going on? I feel like I'm in the 90s again. Like, what's going on here? I thought we were past that.
No. It's either Jim Lee or they draw some weird stuff like, I don't know, off of one of these cartoons.
Yeah, it's so weird. Yeah, there's like there's this very diverse style, right? You have like this like Adventure Time or like a Rick and Morty type of style versus, and then the extreme polar opposite of like, or manga somewhere in the middle. And then you have like
Jim Lee.
He's a great artist. You know, I have nothing against him, but I just think when you become the house style and everything looks like it, I think that's why books are not doing well, because comic book artists, you could look at an artist and say, oh, that's, you know, that's Tom Siaka, or that's Jack Kirby, or
John Byrne, or George
John Byrne. Oh my God, like John Byrne or Joe Kubert, or you know, any of those guys. Like everyone has their style. Gil Kane. Yeah. And there is no Gil Kane today. There is no Joe Kubert, unless you're talking about his sons. Right. They look kind of like Jim Lee now, you know?
Yeah. There was a while there, I don't know if you noticed, during when DC did the 52, right? And Jim Lee was, I guess, in charge of all the artists.
Right.
And you could see there was such a homogenous style that I forget. I remember there was one series, there was a couple of series I was collecting. Like they did Frankenstein and a couple of weird books that I really enjoyed. But almost every issue they had a different artist, and you can't tell.
You can't tell the difference.
You can't tell the difference.
And that's They don't want artists in their companies, because artists will turn out like McFarlane and Silvestri and Liefeld and then
Jim Lee.
Lee at the time. And then they'll leave you. They'll railroad your company. Those guys basically set the precedent that scared these corporations, and they were like, we're going to keep artists separate. They're not going to communicate. There's not going to be a bullpen where everyone could chill out and chit chat. The writer's not going to know the artist is not going to know the writer, the inker's not going to know, you know, it's just like divide and conquer. And then there's no unions on top of it. You think, why is there no unions in comic books? There's unions in Hollywood for artists. There's no unions for comics, and they squashed that, you know.
Oh yeah, well, you know, now what is it? DC shrinking, right? And they've already said they're cutting their rates.
Exactly.
That's crazy. I was just like, I don't know what their rates are, and I don't really care because I'm not gonna work over there. But I'm like, could you imagine being there 10 years?
Yeah.
And you got to a certain rate, and they're like, yo, bro, we can only pay you half.
Right.
What do you tell your wife? What do you tell your kids? All right, well, no Christmas this year. Sorry, Susie.
Yeah. And the 90s, you know, like thousands of dollars for a page, and then it's dropped actually already. Like some people get what, 5 and change or 3 and change, but it's dropped. Like Archie never raised their rates. They still pay people $50 a page and $40 a page. They never evolved. You know, they're like.
But Boom Studios, I've heard complaints about them. You know, Boom, they're paying $50 a page, $40 a page. You know, sometimes $20 a page.
That's
exactly.
That's what I charge.
Well, look, I mean, when I was writing porn, I made more money than that. You know,
that's sad, because if that's what I pay artists, like between 20 and 50 a page,
right?
You know, when I need an extra hand, and the corporations are doing that, that means I'm doing pretty good.
Exactly. That's right. I'm paying pro rate, right?
Right.
As sad as it is, you know, but it is what it is. Right?
Yeah, you know. I mean, that's I mean, I pay pros that. I paid them like 50 a page, sometimes 100 if they do inks and stuff like that combined. You know, it's like 100 a page, but you know, that was then. I don't need anybody. You know what? I got tired of working with other artists because they're very slow. Except for Teravani, and he was the only one that was super fast. he was he was very professional. But other artists are very slow. Like, I mean, you know, I love Paris Cullins, great guy, but it took him almost 3 years to work on one comic book, like a 24-page comic, and then it I had to finish it. Like, I had to hire additional inkers just to finish it. You know, so that cost me. And I have no anything against him. He's a great guy. We're still friends. I was just like, dude, you're killing my book.
You're killing me.
I was like, if I drew this myself, I would have been on issue 10 already. You know, it's like issue 4 for like 3 years. You know,
Wow. Like, was he working at DC at the time?
No, he wasn't. He was just basically doing a lot of indie stuff at that time. You know.
Wow. Oh yeah. No.
I think that's the problem with the companies too, because you have great artists like Paris that are super talented. That and other people like Larry Stroman and Stephen Harris and a lot of these guys that are fucking like rock stars in their own right, you know. You know, they are like the Rolling Stones for comic books, and like, you know, like a Def Leppard or like, you know, it's like all those rock stars. But you know,
Walter Simonson is still out there cranking.
Yeah, Walt Simonson. Yeah, I mean, these people are like. These guys are our rock stars. That's our Hall of Fame. But the companies kind of like don't want them to be the Hall of Fame. You know.
Like, when was the last time you saw Mike Zeck draw a comic?
Never. I mean,
since the 90s.
Since the 90s, like I haven't seen him do anything new at all. Like, I actually tried to get Mike Zeck and Larry Hama together on a project, but they declined. And I thought that would have been a great combination, you know. But well, Zeck said he was interested, but then I have to go through his agent, and that was like another thing, you know. But
they can't afford his rate.
Yeah, Joe, that's it. What's that?
They can't afford his rates because he's used to making 90s rates, and he won't go down.
Yeah, well, I think you have to do that though. You have to say the buck stops here, and if you want me, this is what you do, and they'll just pay him for covers, and they make more money doing covers anyway, you know.
But I haven't even seen him do that.
Yeah,
you know, that's the crazy thing.
Yeah, but I would love to have those two guys together on a book. You know, maybe I should ask them again now that there's no conventions. They'll probably say yes.
Hey man, if you got that kind of money, good luck. That's all I have to say.
I mean, just like I mean, I could do the interiors, just have Hammer write it. I could do the interiors and then have Zeck do the covers and stuff like that. Or even, I mean, maybe, I don't know, we'll see. I don't know what his rate is, so maybe I will do the interiors too. But that would be fantastic. I like working with the old school guys, the guys that I grew up with. First of all, they're very friendly and personal. They're not frat boys. You know? They're very warm and friendly. You know, they're very just open, down to earth people. You know, and that's what made comic books, because you're reading this thing as a child, and you're reading this person's perspective, their personality, their viewpoints, their morals. And most people don't think that. They think, oh, it's Superman. It's like, no, this is a code that we live by, you know. And of course, by the time I got into my 20s, I was more like Robert Crumb, and I was like, let's putting morals and codes.
Some more coke and more chicks.
Right.
Where's the weed?
You know, it's like. But I mean, as I started doing comic books, my third book was with you. I told you, right? Like the No One anthology. I was doing manga then, and then that died real quick because I did a manga show, one of those big conventions like Crystal City or something like that. I forget.
Was it Boston?
No, it was like somewhere in the South, like Virginia or something like that, or I don't know. One of those big manga conventions, it was like a 3 or 4 day convention.
Right. And this was in the 90s?
This is 90, no, early 2000s. Because you were, that's right, 2002 or 3. You were still printing then, right? Something like that.
That's when I think I started around that time.
Yeah, so it was 2002 or 3. I was doing the manga. And I was drawing the manga in the 90s, but I didn't publish it until the early 2000s because I just didn't. The concept was to send it to Japan and get it looked at there, but I couldn't find someone to translate it into Japanese. And I knew Japanese people, but they were like, "Oh, I'm not a writer. I don't know if I can do it." They didn't want to do it. But I drew the whole book backwards. This is like before the whole flip comic book, because America was flipping mangas backwards.
Right, flipping the pages.
And like reversing them. And I drew the whole thing backwards. And then when I went through you, I was like, well, no one's going to be able to read this backwards. So this is before Tokyo Pop. So, you know, Tokyo Pop was one of those like printing the books the way they're supposed to.
Yeah.
I was like, I got to flip all these pages. So I had to reverse everything. I had to like, and then when the kids read it, you know, like people at the conventions looked at it, they're like, oh, is there a cartoon? Is it on Cartoon Network? And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like Cartoon Network. You know, like there's some anime show on Cartoon Network back then. I was like, no, it's an indie comic book. It doesn't have a cartoon. Oh, I'm not interested. And I thought that the manga fans in America, anyway, the manga fans were posers.
Pretty much. They were. I'll tell you what I remember of them, because we were doing the adult comics we were doing were all based on anime. Right. And we did Matthew, the guy I was working with, we did Tenchi Muyo.
Right.
And we went to, there was a big show in Maryland. I don't even remember the name of it anymore. But we would go out there, and I mean, those are some mean ass fans. Like the anime fans were just mean, and it was just like, wow.
They were really blunt, like you know. Yeah.
But what's funny though is like I started doing Boston anime in 2010, 2009, around that period, and the scene had completely changed. There was a lot of younger people, and they were very nice. Right. And that was a big difference. That was huge. I mean, it was only probably about 10, 12 years difference in time, but the fan base had completely changed. It had gone from like these old dudes dressing up as Sailor Moon,
right.
You know, to a lot of like tweens.
Right. Yeah,
you know, a lot of younger kids.
A lot. That's true, because remember we grew up with Macross and like G-Force. And then Pokemon exploded and corrupted manga forever.
Forever, that was it.
Like manga was the dark stuff, like Go-Go 13, Lensman, Akira. That was like pretty stuff. And then all of a sudden Pokemon came out, and nothing else. All they wanted from Japan was Pokemon. You know, like Pokemon like stuff like Digimon or whatever. And I was like, what the fuck happened? I was like
So all right, let's talk about something that's a little bit that's how should we say, near and dear to your heart, right? So you told me, and I heard you talk about it a couple of times, you had done a book called Punchline.
Yes, I did.
Right. And you know, we were just talking about it before we started on the show, and I said there's as in Indy, there's 3 of you, and there's DC.
Right.
So I was like, all right, so how do you right? So how do you feel about that?
Indie wise, I don't really care. I was first, you know, back when, you know, because, you know, we're old guys. I had well, this is how it happened. I was at a convention. I think it was, I believe it's 2005, you know, memory, a little rusty, but I was at the Big Apple. I was sitting with Denny O'Neill, and he liked some of my artwork going through my portfolio. I was sitting with his wife, chit-chatting. We were like, literally like almost shoulder to shoulder, because we're both teachers. She was a teacher up in Rockland County, where I live now. She's like 2 or 3 towns over, or she was, and she had just retired around that time. She was planning to retire that year, and then he was there, and I was like, you know, we kind of reconnected because I hadn't seen him since the 90s, you know. So you know, since the early 90s, since I was a student, like 93, I think I took his class only once. Yeah, most teachers that were in comics, I would take their classes multiple times. I think I took Denny once because he gave me a D. But it's my fault though, because I wanted to push the envelope with him, and I gave him like an adult comic book script, and he just wrote on top, "This is not comics."
D.
But it was more like I would say like Legend of the Overfiend type of comic.
Should have bought him a copy of Faust.
Yeah. right. It's like exactly. So yeah, we had these kind of comics that were coming out at that time. You had Faust and what's his name? Danzig had all those books out. You know, that was like the thing. I still have those. Yeah, it's like, but and then so I gave him years and years later. I'm an educator. I had this Batman thing. This is before Bronx Heroes really blew up. I was still pushing a world without superheroes, and other stuff that I was publishing at the time. Like, you know, like I said, I'm a big Robert Crumb, S. Clay Wilson, Spain Rodriguez guy. That's what college did to me. I went from Marvel and DC to Raw. Like, it was like so it just totally changed my perspective on what a comic book could be, you know. So I was like, oh, you know, I was working on this Batman thing, and I gave him some ideas and stuff, and he was like, well, here's my address, blah blah blah, and I was like, oh, you live near my parents, because my parents were living in the house I'm living now at the time. And I was like, oh, I could just drop it off to you. And then we were trying to make plans. And then that Sunday near the end of the show, I was like, hey, what convention you're going to be at next? And he says, Baltimore, the Baltimore Comic-Con. And I was like, I think I'm going to be there as well, because I didn't have a table, but I was going to go see my cousin, because we used to do shows. And he lives in Baltimore, and I used to live in Baltimore when I was a teenager. So we, you know, I would go to the conventions whenever they had them. This is when there was not many conventions, you know. So like, you had a convention, like, oh, we're going. Doesn't matter what it was very rare. So I got the package together, got him the synopsis, you know, 8-issue synopsis with details, all the characters, all the descriptions, all that stuff. And Punchline was one of those characters. It was a story where the new Joker would be the female Robin. I remember there was this really famous artist at the time was doing a female Robin in DC Comics. So I made her the new Joker. So the story took place in the year 2020. And it was about the generation of the Batman mythos. So I created new characters. Punchline was one of them. And she was Harley Quinn's sidekick. So basically what happens is that the Joker and Ra's al Ghul came together and made this Joker toxin that had nanobites or nanomachines in them. And they would basically take over your body, and you would turn into the actual Joker. You become the Joker, you know. But it wasn't a poison. It was a recreational drug. So it was in vogue to have that Joker smile on your face. And so all the celebrities and rich people are doing this drug. It's not like Tinian the Fourth did nanobites. People turn into Joker. Or they turn into zombies. Like, what? It's like, I did it, you know, because again, it's like I was already at this level here where I'm writing more like nonfiction type stuff.
Right.
And I was like, well, what would Joker's serum be in the real world? You know, he's kind of cool. So he would be cool.
Right.
So the year 2020, right? And then we had the Joker movie, right? Like I said, I'm ahead of my time. So it's like, so the Joker was not seen as a bad guy in the year 2020. He was changing his image into more of like a bad boy celebrity type of thing. And everyone wanted to know him in Hollywood. But he still had that demented part of him that he wanted to kill Batman. Still. So that didn't change.
That was his one flaw.
Right. He could have let that go. So what does he do? He comes up with the ultimate plan. He kidnaps and kills the Teen Titans with Ra's al Ghul. He kills Alfred. He kills. He just says, "Let's take it to the next level," and he kills Batman's nurse woman. What was her name? The one that raised him as a stepmother, like a foster. I forget her name.
I'm not that big in Batman.
So he kills her. Thompson, I think her name was. He kills all of them, and Batman loses it and goes crazy. But it's a trap. So Batman goes in knowing it's a trap with this female Robin who's now an adult. Kind of like when Dick Grayson was an adult and he was starting to rebel, like Jason Todd. And then they get taken out. by this new gang. So Joker has a new gang. So he kind of like almost like they did with the Penguin.
Mm-hmm.
Penguin no longer is in the crimes himself, you know.
Right.
He has this other gang called the Punch and Judy gang, and Harley Quinn is running it. She's the big baddie, really. Joker's like the man behind the scenes, like the Lex Luthor. And Punchline is this kid that she takes under her wing, but Punchline double crosses her and kills her.
Mm.
And Batman gets killed by the Joker and Ra's al Ghul while killing both of them in a final battle. And then the Robin has so much of this drug that they fed them both of the drugs. So Batman was gonna die anyway because he had so much of this toxin in his body that he was gonna turn into the Joker. He would become the Joker.
Right.
So he would have to die. He would suicide. But the female Robin's still young. Young people don't think that way. So she basically escapes and then turns into the Joker mentally. She's still a female, but she's the Joker. And then she has a war between Harley Quinn, Punchline, and the new Joker gang. But then Punchline betrays Harley Quinn and takes over what we call the Punch and Judy gang and joins forces with the new Joker. And then as the story continued, you find out that Azrael set up the whole thing. Azrael set up Batman to be betrayed because he still felt resentment for losing the mantle of the Bat. And that was the name of the story. It was called Mantle for the Bat. So and then Barbara Gordon, who was Oracle, was now obese, but she figured a way to put her essence into the computers and became a living computer. You know, which they ended up ripping off. So they ripped off a lot of stuff off this stuff. Like they did that. And then, the story was called Mantle for the Bat, right? And then in 2009, that was 2005, they came out with this story called Battle for the Cow by Tony S. Daniels, which is where they killed Batman. The costume design for that, they introduced Damian Wayne, which if you look at his costume, it's very close to the female Robin costume that I designed. You know, they reintroduced Batwoman, which I didn't do that. But a lot of stuff that the designs that I did ended up being later on used in the video games of Batman. I did a lot of different designs that Catwoman and stuff that I saw in Injustice. And this story is basically about the death of Batman and people fighting over who's going to be the next Batman. And essentially, that's what I had happening with the Batman family. They were fighting about who's going to be the next Batman. Like, is it Dick? And then Dick takes over and he realizes, I can't fight the crime the way Batman does. I have to go darker. So he takes all the villains' weapons and defeats them and ends crime using their own weapons against them, their own tricks like the fear gas, the freeze gun. And they did that here. They did that. But I took it a step further. He took Thanagarian technology. He gets wings. And then he felt that's not enough. The wings get destroyed. So he feels, I have to become a bat, and takes the Man-Bat formula and becomes
hybrid.
A hybrid human. He's not total full-on bat. He still has a human face, but he has wings coming out of his bat. Almost like the X-Force Angel. Remember when he became that blue Archangel, whatever?
Archangel, yeah.
So I was trying to make him badass like that, you know? Watch them do that next.
It's coming.
We're going to do that next. They're like, oh, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. So instead of giving me a job, they ripped it off. They came up with this book. Then the New 52 came out. Then I got sued by Marvel and DC for the World Without Superheroes book. And then they stole more shit from my book. Like they got rid of Superman's underwear because I had a parody character called Omnipotent. He was like a Latino Superman, but he had no underwear. You know. Then they took his designs and mimicked it for a cartoon they did called Crisis on Two Earths. Then they took the Green Lantern and turned him into a hobo in space, which was like this guy called Mystery Man, which is not an original name, but he was basically this time traveler who was like a hobo the rift, in the time space. You can time travel.
Right.
They literally took panels out of my comic book.
Wow.
The guy who they said can't draw, that I
Mm-hmm.
don't have their look, that I have too much of an underground style, and they literally reversed it and lightboxed it.
Wow.
You know? And then they took me to court to sue me to try to stop me from producing my book.
No, that was the whole thing with superheroes, though, right? Using
the trademark, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was that book, and then that was the book that I published Punchline in during the same year that I put Punchline in a world without superheroes in one issue, because I was so bitter about like these guys ripping me off. I was like, I'm going to put all my designs and I'm going to do this adult comic book. So World Without Superheroes was like this adult comic book, and I had this one issue that was like a porn star named Glamour. She was like a sidekick turned porn star and celebrity, and then I took all those designs that I did for that Batman stuff that was original, including Punchline. I put them in the book. I was like, let's see them steal it now. It'll be forever known as Punchline was in the porn. So, and then, 15 years later, I don't know, things float around, right? This guy was that guy that everyone's kissing Tom King's ass writing. They killed Alfred, and then when they did that, I hated Tom King's writing. I mean, he's a good writer, but he just didn't know how to write Batman. And then I said, they killed Alfred. I was like, oh shit. I have a feeling they're going to start using my script again. Now, what he wrote had nothing to do with anything that I wrote. But that one point, that in the year 2020, Alfred gets killed, I was like, nah, maybe it's just a coincidence. 4 issues later, under another writer, you have all this news about Punchline this and Punchline that. Right. I was like, no, I was fucking, literally, I woke up and had like I thought I was gonna have a stroke, like all the muscles in my chest, because 2010, I wrote Punchline. I didn't know that Antarctic Press had a comic book called Punchline, and I didn't know about the Tap Dance Killer either. What I did know is that Denny O'Neil took my script. He avoided me ever since. Like whenever we talked, we took pictures together at shows and stuff like that, small talk. But I stopped bringing it up because I have a 3-strike rule. Right. So like I don't go chasing people. I don't beg people like some white people that got in the industry. They're like, oh, I can just harass them and harass them and harass them. I don't do that because I'm not desperate. I'm a career guy. I have a job. I was probably making more than Denny O'Neil as a teacher in New York. It's like, so, and I had my own company. At that point, I had Bronx Heroes, and Bronx Heroes was doing very well. I don't need DC and Marvel, And they were, plus they were suing me. So it's like,
that never helps.
Right. So, it's very dramatic, right? Because the same year that DC sued me, I was actually in child support court with my ex and like fighting for custody over my autistic daughter. So I was literally fighting 2 court cases for 4 years consecutively. Like I had to, okay, I'm going to prepare my deposition for DC and Marvel. Okay, I got to prepare my deposition for this court case so I can try to get custody of my kid. It's like wow. 4 years I did that. A lot of people don't know that. So,
that's crazy.
And then I came to a point and I said, what am I going to do? I can't keep doing this. I got to choose one. Am I going to fight DC or am I going to try to get my daughter? So I settled with DC. I settled with them. We had an agreement. Because these lawyers were like, I represented myself fighting them, by the way. I had a lot of help from lawyers and people who heard about it that gave me information. So I had like a little team of people that volunteered legal stuff and know-how that kept me in the fight, So hats off to them.
Seriously.
And I had a lot of like Ron Coleman, who I've never met in person, wrote about my case. He has a blog, and it's called. It's funny because it's almost like a tongue-in-cheek joke. Likelihood of confusion, right? which is the legal term, and that's his blog. And he wrote about it, saying that if I had the money, that I could beat Marvel and DC, and that kept me going, because he's like one of the top lawyers in New York with trademark law, and he was saying clearly this guy will win if Marvel and DC. If he had 50 grand, if he had their like deep pockets, I would beat them.
Right.
And I could have brought it to the Supreme Court, and I could have, if I really wanted to invest in that, I could have made superhero public domain. It was that serious. Like they were scared of me because I wasn't stopping. Yeah. You know, I was like, "Fuck these guys." I'm getting like a lot of like advice from different lawyers. I'm getting like, I don't need a lawyer. I was just, it's like, so I mean, that kept me in the fight. But then I was just like, well, I got my daughter staying, and it was, you know, and then, you know, you got work, and then I'm married, and then, you know, I had a new baby. So a lot of stuff was going on in the works. I had a new son. So I was like, I gotta drop one of these. So I dropped the Marvel and DC. We settled, we shook hands, we have an agreement. They haven't stuck to it. Although I did say they did help me the other day. I did talk to them the other day. So I keep in touch with these guys. So I wouldn't say that we're friends, but there are some people that were at that law firm at that time that were that educated me. And I find now that DC's in California, and it's an education, you know, and as a teacher, I love to learn. So, so just having conversations with them, I learn new shit, you know?
No, I could imagine. I mean, just getting that insight.
Right. And it's not like they're being buddy-buddy. They're not. They're representing their client. But just the way their language, their poise, how they create arguments, how they form sentences, you know, that's always been a wealth of knowledge for years. You know, this case is, nobody fucks with me anymore because of that. I stopped a movie, was called World Without Superheroes, during my court battle. Some Canadian guy, you know, all respect due to him, he's a indie creator, trying to make a movie with my title, and I stopped him with my agreement with Marvel and DC. I was like, hey, I have exclusive rights to this, and Marvel and DC got my back. You know? You know? Not who can say that?
This is true, man. This is true.
I can. And there was a situation recently that came up, and I went back and talked to them again. I was like, hey, I have a situation. What do you think? So because of the punchline thing, I'm not like they're the enemy. You know, like Democrats and Republicans are beating each other up, and you can't be that way. You can't conduct business that way. You really have to approach people with respect. And I learned this from my students, you know, like everyone wants to be respected no matter what, right? Everyone wants respect. Even the people who are disrespectful want respect. That's why they're disrespectful, because they feel that that's the only way they're going to get respect is by being rude and disrespectful. So you have to come to them on an even playing field. And so far, it's been civil. So, I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to go to court with DC and Marvel over punchline. What I tried to do was I talked to the guy from Antarctic Press and Tap Dance Killer. And I've been trying to get them to join me against them. But, you know, wishful thinking, because not everyone's me. Not everyone has that fuerza. You know? And the fuego, the fire in your body to fight. Not everyone's like that, especially white guys. Like, no, I want to get along to get along. You know, it's like, you know, and you know, respect to them and their creatives. Like someone told me, "Hey, man, these guys are using punchline. What are you gonna do?" I was like, "Let them," because that's not. I'm punchline clown detective now. I'm not punchline. See, if I had trademarked, this is my trademark. So what I did when they announced it, I went and trademarked it. And I was like, I'm going to trademark punchline. But then I was like, well, if I just did punchline by itself, you know, trademark is a literal element, right? So, and if I did punchline, not only would I have DC to battle with, just like that Bleeding Cool article said, I would have Antarctic Press to deal with, because granted, I have 2 publications, one in 2010 and 2012, where Punchline appears. Right?
Prior.
That would win me a case, right? Because his book came out, I think, in 2018. But I would make enemies. And I was like, I'm not trying to make enemies.
Right.
I'm trying to make allies. And I'm trying to sustain. I don't want to be like World Without Superheroes, where I'm fighting for superheroes and then I have to settle. I don't want to settle. I want to win. I was like, you know what? Trademark is the literal element. And I'm rewriting. I was actually working on Punchline already during that time, which pisses me off, because I was already 2 issues into Punchline and nobody knew about it, except for somebody that worked for Marvel that used to live with me. And that's another thing I wonder about, because he would get back work at DC and then moved out in a hurry. That's a whole nother ball of wax, which I'm not going to get into, but that might be another lawsuit.
That'll be a whole nother podcast.
But I mean, I was like, if I name it Punchline Clown Detective,
right,
and make her a good guy, then there's nothing they can do. And it's true. So
true. The name is too different.
DC threatened to take me to court over the Punchline, and I sent them the artwork and some stuff. I sent them evidence that I have. I said, well, this is what I got. This is my Punchline. And this is what I gave to your head DC Batman editor back in 2005. And it's not this a random thing at a convention. This guy lived like 20 minutes from my parents and 20 minutes from me where I live now.
Right.
Like,
you had a connection.
He was a stranger. He was my professor in college. We saw each other at shows and events. We were civil towards each other. We talked to each other. I wouldn't say we're best buddies. We weren't, but we were acquaintances, professional acquaintances at the least. So it's like, so what are you going to say? And did Denny and Neil steal it directly? No. What he probably did was give it to another editor back in 2005. And then that editor did whatever they did with it and gave, and then it gets passed around, kind of like the Matrix script, The Matrix script was stolen when the writer was writing for Razorline Comics for the Wachowski brothers for Marvel, and then that floated around. And then, James Cameron stole from it for Terminator, and then some other sci-fi guy stole from it. So this her script was being passed around until the Wachowskis come along, and they're not smart enough to write their own script. They just used the script with her name on it, and the whole cast can see it, and they lost. So that's what I have. I had the smoking gun. Not only that, I have his home address and his handwriting. I have emails, correspondences. I have lots of stuff. So they would lose. They would all lose. They would all lose. But that's not my goal. I'm 46 years old. I'm not trying to burn bridges. I'm not trying to start fires. I'm not in my 20s or 30s anymore.
Right.
I just want what's mine, and I got it. But they still need to pay me. So that's the issue. So
that might be reaching a little too far for them,
Right.
That check.
They redesigned the character. It doesn't look like her except for the little circle things. That's, they actually, my Punchline originally had 3 circles, and if you look at Punchline now, she had 3 circles, and then they removed one. My Punchline had multiple piercing ears. Same thing. The only different, my Punchline has 2 little balls on her head. She has 4 balls on her head. It's like, mine's red, hers is purple. Theirs is purple. It's like, but she has a purple trench coat. So, I mean, but it's not, to me, that's, I'm not even upset at the design. I think the artist is a great artist. God bless him. I don't think that Tinian's an evil person. I just know that he lied in C2E2 interview. Because in one breath he says, I never wrote a script, and we looked at the elements and we're so excited that we gave it to the artist to create the design for the character. That's the truth. His second breath of lying saying, I created Punchline. Well, no. And I sent that to the lawyer. I said, look, C2E2 has this video. I said, look what he says. He says, I went to the editor and I received the elements. I didn't write anything. And we were so excited about the elements that we received that we gave it to the artist. And he says, how do you, where's your creator? Where did you become a creator?
Mm-hmm.
So he admitted at a convention, on an interview, on DC's website, I received something that said punchline on it.
Right.
I did not write anything and gave those elements to the artist.
Mm-hmm.
What are those elements? My script, my synopsis, my breakdown for 8 issues, character developments, character designs, all that stuff. You know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I can imagine sometimes they do hit those slush piles hard.
Yeah. And you want to know something funny about that? There was a line in the script that I had forgotten about. I just read it recently when Punchline came out.
Mm.
There is a scene where Harley Quinn keeps referring to Robin as Red Robin, Little Red Robin, Little Red Robin.
Right.
And what came out? Red Robin shortly after that. And his designs were similar, very similar to the designs of the new design that I did for Red Robin.
Wow. Hey, man.
So, you know, it's like,
that's
honestly,
crazy.
If I created a timeline and took them to court, they would be paying me a shit ton of money, you know, and that's just the truth, you know, because they took me to court over the same book that I later took the same characters and published it in. So they were like trying to let's clean up the bodies. They were doing the Sopranos move, you know, put the body on the boat and dump it in the ocean, and but I didn't die.
Made it out. All right. Well,
yeah.
I mean, that's a really interesting story, dude. We're coming close to an hour, so we're.
Oh yeah, we can wrap it up. But one more thing, there's a book called The 3 Jokers that just came out, and you know what that's about? Joker using technology to replicate himself, and he makes hundreds of Jokers that are DNA identical to him.
Wow.
So, and it's a big hit. So.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
I mean, yeah, man. I mean, it's interesting because I mean, you know, you hear about these things, you know, like yours isn't the first one that I've ever heard of, you know, and I mean, and it's just weird when you hear about these things, and you're just like, what are these people doing, and why are they doing it like this?
Because they don't want to hire Latinos. That's why they want to keep the status quo. We'll have our George Perez and you know a few guys here and there sprinkled around, but we don't want them taking over the industry. You know, they don't have diversity in DC. It's still pretty much a white industry, you know, unless you're going to count the people overseas that they pay them nothing to
right, yeah.
Like, you know, it's like, but this is the Punchline book here. This is the graphic novel. So I actually started this before the pandemic. And then once they announced it, I was like, I got to finish and print this, you know?
Right.
So the pandemic helped me solidify my writing, and then because you know when I started it, it was nothing like the Batman script that I wrote. I was revamping the character, new story, all that stuff. And then after the pandemic happened, I was like, I have to go back to the well. They're going back to the well. I mean, with this one synopsis script over and over and over again, and I hadn't read it in over a decade, you know.
Right.
So I was like, I went back to the well. Read it, and I was like, this is fucking good. It was for Elseworlds. So I was like, I need to put those elements back in the story. So I did. So issues 3 and 4 were rewritten, but because I can't use Batman and Robin. So I created a character called the Dragon and the Sparrow, and that's my dynamic duo. You know, and
those are the ciphers.
Right. And what's funny about this, I'm glad I did that because there are issues of Punchline that were published recently after this, because I put this out, I sold it, I trademarked it, I put it on digital sale, I started making sales on my website. I'm glad I went back to it because guess what? They ripped, they literally used the same scenes and the same. So if you read this and you read their stuff, this is better. This is the real deal, you know? And, you know, and then I'm also making fun of myself too. So I'm kind of making fun of the whole Batman genre in it too. So I made it more tongue in cheek, you know?
Right.
So I mean, that's so. But if you read it, you're like, wow. Like I kept the nanobite thing because they didn't reveal that when they first revealed Punchline. I had no idea they were going to steal my script. I just thought they were taking the character. And so everything that was in there, like the drug deal that happens at the harbor and a big battle, they do that in their Batman story. They do. It's literally, it follows the same beats. So
wow. They got you, bro. They got you. But
got me. But time will tell where I will get them to. It's gonna come back. Life is a boomerang.
This is true. All right, so check it out, man. I got a few goofy questions I'm gonna ask you. And then we're gonna wrap it up. But before that, let everybody know where they can find you and your work.
All right, you can find me at bxhcc.com, or you can Google Bronx Heroes, right? And you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat. I don't use Snapchat that much. TikTok, all Bronx Heroes. So if you look Bronx Heroes on all of those, you can find me on all those. And I forgot to mention these books, but we also have Bronx Heroes in Trumpland.
Nice.
And we have Brother Lone Star. So those are other books you can find on that website.
All right, cool. Now, I got two questions. I got two silly questions I like to ask everybody. One, if you had the opportunity to get any artist, living or dead, to do a cover for you, who would you get?
Jack Kirby.
Okay, that's fair enough. That's fair. That's cool.
Or Will Eisner, because I love them both.
Right. No, yeah. Listen, either one. I'll be honest with you. If I had to make a choice, I would pick Wally Wood.
Oh, yeah, Wally Wood's really good too. Yeah. CD. Well, I had it. I gave it to Tom recently. He had a music CD that I had for years. Singing acoustic at a bar or something like that.
Really? That's hilarious.
Yeah.
All right. And the second question, and I guess this is kind of weird because considering the conversation we just had, if you were given a choice to go up to one of the big companies, what's the character you'd want to write or create or work on?
Well, if I worked for DC or Marvel?
Yeah. Or any of the companies. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to just be Marvel or DC.
Well, I don't know, man. Honestly, I always like the obscure characters like the Doom Patrol and Animal Man because of the whole British invasion thing that happened with the Sandman and all that stuff. I love Vertigo books. Any of those characters like Animal Man. I actually wrote a synopsis for Animal Man. They never used it, but I thought it was funny. They brought him back into the New 52. But I love the story that was. What I was trying to do when they canceled Animal Man in the early 2000s. It was going so strong, and they hired this one writer, and she just killed the book in like 12 issues. I was like, why did they hire this person? She just destroyed this book, like totally different direction. And I think that's the problem with comic book writers, why people are not interested in reading comics anymore, because it's almost like Egypt. You're the pharaoh, then then there's another pharaoh. They smash your face, they cut your nose off, on all your statues, they deface everything that you did, they undo what you did, and they try to outdo you. And you shouldn't do that. I would bring back like Grant Morrison's Invisibles, or something like that. Something that quirky. That's more up my alley. That's the style that I like to write in. If I worked for Marvel, Silver Surfer.
Okay, cool.
Or even the what's his name? I was gonna say the New Gods, the Eternals, or anything that was a Kirby thing that Kirby did.
Devil Dinosaur,
yeah. Or 2001: Space Odyssey. People sleep on that book. That was a great book. And I don't know. Did you ever see that movie Interstellar?
Interstellar. Which one is that?
Matthew McConaughey.
I don't think so.
If you read the Jack Kirby comic books of 2001: Space Odyssey, nothing like the Kubrick movie, and you watch Interstellar, you will see that they actually used actual panels, pages from the Jack Kirby comic books for that movie. Yeah, there was a lot, And I was like, or Commandy. I would love to write Commandy.
Commandy's an interesting one. Whatever.
I'm my wife had my son in Chinese.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
It happens. All right, so look, I got some comparatives, and then we can wrap it up. All right, so
Okay.
all right, I'll softball you at first. So we'll go with the easy ones. Godzilla or Gamera?
Godzilla.
Okay. Batman or Captain America?
That's hard, man. Like Captain America, Batman, and Iron Man, those are like, oh my, you know.
That's your trinity.
It changes, you know. When I was a kid, I loved Superman and Batman as a little kid. Then I loved Green Arrow and Green Lantern as I got older.
Right.
Like then I loved John Constantine and Swamp Thing. This has got darker and darker, you know. It's like
right.
So Captain America, of course, you said or Batman. I have to go with Batman. I have more Batman stuff than Captain America stuff around my house.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
Stan Lee or Jack Kirby?
Jack Kirby. Stan Lee. I don't want to say anything to insult Stan Lee, but I never met him or knew him. I know a lot of people that did. They say he's a nice guy. I met him only once for a brief moment. He was friendly and professional, but he's a goddamn liar.
Yeah. You know, when he says things,
they say he's a showman.
Huh?
He was a showman.
He was a showman. Definitely.
He was not a writer. He wrote. He was not a writer. You want to know why? I'm gonna debunk Stan Lee right now, in 3 seconds. He always talked about that great American novel he wanted to write. It was never written.
I know. Because I was just like, why didn't you write that novel?
Right. Enough said.
Exactly.
He's another Bob Kane, and they were best friends.
Bob Kane, Jesus. Spock or Data?
Damn, you hitting me hard. Classic Spock, but I love Data too. Spock, yeah.
All right, cool. Here's one for you. Frank Miller or Alan Moore?
Alan Moore. Frank Miller is just ninjas and gangsters. And you know, it's funny. I'll tell you, this is the career of Frank Miller. He did gangsters and which one? He did Daredevil first. Ninjas, gangsters, and Daredevil, right? Goes to DC. Ninjas and gangsters in DC. He does his own Sin City, and he worked for Will Eisner. He was Will Eisner's apprentice, right? What did Will Eisner do? Gangsters, outer space, eventually with Wally Wood, right? It's like, so Sin City is basically the Spirit, just grittier. Marv is really, you know, Jack, whatever his name was, the Spirit's alter ego. You know, that's basically who he is. You know, I mean, he's just repeating himself, no matter, you know. It's like wash, rinse, repeat. It's damn entertaining.
Oh yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I don't get me wrong. I like reading Frank Miller stuff. You know, especially his early stuff. But basically, he was just a kung fu guy. He's just basically doing what was popular in pop culture back then. You had the kung fu movies on TV. You know, you had like Buck Rogers in the 70s, right? You had the Untouchables in the 80s, and in the 60s, you had the TV shows, and then you had the movies. That's all he's doing. He was just doing what was popular at that moment. He had his finger on the pulse of what was popular, and that's what made him popular, because he was able to emulate that in comics where nobody else was. So, to Frank Miller's credit, he is a writer.
Oh, he is. Yes.
But Alan Moore is my favorite.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Hulk Hogan or Ric Flair?
Hulk Hogan.
Okay.
We'll have the Roddy Piper.
You know, Sandman or Swamp Thing?
Damn, that's hard too. That's a hard one. I love them both. I don't want to be up Alan Moore's ass, but I'll say Sandman. I do like Swamp. I have everything that they put out, not the newer stuff, the original stuff. You know.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah, I'm waiting. Well, I got
They don't write Swamp Thing good anymore. Like all these writers that they don't know how to write Swamp Thing. Even when Len Wein went back and writing it, he was writing it like he wrote it in the 70s and divorced everything Alan Moore did. And I was like, what are you doing, stupid?
Yeah, that's what I heard. No, I'm waiting for the Absolute Swamp Thing #2.
Oh, really? What's that?
Yeah, I'm waiting for it's they're reprinting Alan Moore's run in absolute form. So it's like these big books like this, hardcover, slipcase.
That's awesome.
Yeah. No, they look incredible.
Oh yeah, John Tolobin.
Mm-hmm.
Miracle Man is one of my favorite superhero stories that he told. A lot of people sleep on that one, but that's a lot of TV shows are ripping that one off left and right.
Well, hopefully he's getting. Well, I don't know. Hopefully he's getting a check off of it somewhere.
Yeah.
You know.
Hopefully.
All right, so we've done a few of these already. We're gonna do a couple more, and then we're gonna wrap it up. Berno Perez.
La Raza. I like Perez's work, but I was a bigger John Byrne fan as a kid. But I would say as an artist, it would be Perez hands down. Because Byrne was cocky, he's kind of racist, sexist. All those things are that. I mean, you appreciate the artist, but you sometimes you look at their point of view. As like I don't need an Archie Bunker for an artist, you know. And everything he did was Jack Kirby anyway. So
yeah,
he was just emulating Jack Kirby. So that doesn't make you great. I mean, George Perez is a man of his own. I mean, George Perez co-created Astron here, Star Soldier with Tom. You know, that's yeah. He actually has a comic book that George Perez drew in high school of Astron. At his artwork, I have some of it on my computer. I don't know if I'm allowed to show it, but I mean, it's just like you look at it, you're like, this guy was in high school. This guy's drawing like when he was a pro, you know. So
that's
George Perez was he's George Perez, you know. He's
exactly
big time. He should have a star in Hollywood.
All right, here's the last one: Lord of the Rings or Star Wars?
You wouldn't have Star Wars without Lord of the Rings. But I am a bigger fan of Star Wars.
All right. So there you go, bro. So there you go. We made it to the end. Cool. Now, one more time, do me a favor. Let everybody know where they can find you and your work, Ray.
Bronx Heroes. Google us. We're Bronx Heroes everything. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. I think I said Twitter already. Facebook. And our website, www.bxhcc.com, where we have great sales. You can get all these books and T-shirts and all that cool stuff. And we're going to be blowing up in 2021. I'm not going to say a word. I learned the hard way. Getting ripped off by Marvel and DC.
I'm coming for you, baby.
Yeah. But
no, Ray, this was awesome, bro. We got to do this again. Because, I mean, we only talked about one or two things, man. We didn't talk about Bronx Heroes. We didn't talk about your conventions. We didn't talk about a whole bunch of stuff, man. So we got to, you know.
Yeah, because I never talk about, like, my personal life as far as, like, child support and fighting these time. I've never told that story. This is a hot exclusive. Like,
there you go. Yeah. So we definitely got to do this again, bro. So here we go. All right. So this is it. Ray, you have a good night. And everybody else, have a good one. Take care. Well, Ray, hold on, though.
Yeah.
All right. So, guys, thank you so much. And I'll be talking to you later. And let everybody know to like, subscribe, share.
All that.
And I'll be talking to you soon.
And